Hello, dear friends. We're sincerely happy to welcome you again. Today, we will talk with the esteemed Igor Mikhailovich Danilov.
Greetings.
Igor Mikhailovich, a couple of days ago, on April 22nd, 2023, the International Online Forum Global Crisis There Is a Way Out took place. And even though a few days have passed, I'm still greatly impressed by what I saw there. And I'm sure that millions of people from more than 180 countries of the world are just as greatly impressed. It is very difficult to briefly describe the entire range of feelings which all of us experienced at that moment because it was shock, pain, hope, joy, and gratitude simultaneously. You know, some moments of the forum definitely shocked me to the depth of my soul and sometimes to tears, because frankly speaking, it is painful to see how people face the troubles of the consumerist format on their own and how people face the Cerberus one-on-one. We can see how much the Cerberus has grown over all this time, after several months have passed since the previous forum. Nevertheless, throughout this forum, I kept experiencing a feeling of the deepest gratitude to you, Igor Mikhailovich, and the participants of the Creative Society project, because despite everything, they are fighting for life, for their own lives and the lives of other people, as well as gratitude for their selfless and sincere actions in caring about all people. It is so joyful to see the Creative Society project growing and developing, and what prospects are opening up before each of us, that we really can build a wonderful world, a world where everyone's dream can become a reality. And this really has become much closer to each of us thanks to the hypothesis that was voiced at the forum, because this knowledge, these keys, well, this is unique knowledge and a tremendous gift to us, people, since it is the basis of what can save us, all people, from a climate disaster, from what is happening to our planet. These are the keys that open up opportunities for us to control matter. And, you know, after we heard this information, everything is already perceived sort of in a new way and everything falls into place. We understand what you've been talking about for so many years when we look at it all already through the prism of this very knowledge. A great many people have finally understood what you meant when you said that there is a way out, that it is all not being built from scratch, and certain developments are already in place. And all of this was said at a time when people's consciousness certainly had doubts. Will we have enough time to do that? Will we be able to achieve anything and find a way out in our current conditions with such a level of scientific and technological progress, taking into account how little time remains under such limited conditions? And suddenly, we see how before our eyes, people gain a real treasure. They gain this very knowledge. In addition, this knowledge enables us to win time, probably about 1,000 years, because that's exactly how long it would take scientists to come to this hypothesis on their own. Of course, we are so grateful for this information, for this hypothesis, for this knowledge. We understand that this gives us a great chance and prospects which we don't even fully imagine yet. But this knowledge also imposes an enormous responsibility on people, on those who hear it. Certainly, Igor Mikhailovich, we understand that it took a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of years, and a tremendous amount of work has been done by you and a team of scientists, a team of people with respect to this hypothesis. Everyone who heard it understood that this information is very serious and significant. So I have several questions for you. One of them is whether you regret anything. The second question is, what was the hardest thing over all these years? And probably the third question, when one stage ends, it is always interesting to learn about some prospects. Do you have any plans or any dreams you would like to implement, you personally? Of course, apart from building the Creative Society, because it's already sort of our collective dream, but specifically you, what else would you like to implement?
Good questions. But I would like to say right away that, yes, the forum is wonderful. Everyone did a great job, for sure. The forum is significant, I would say very significant, because serious evidence and a lot of facts have been presented, which can no longer be disregarded. I believe those people who watched this forum understand how serious everything is. I mean the issues we will have to solve in terms of climate and unification of people. Those are already indisputable facts. And in my opinion, that's the most valuable thing about this forum. Well, apart from the hypothesis gives us opportunities, but the main point is that at this very forum we have dispelled doubts. I think that after watching this forum, only sociopaths and complete idiots would not want the creative society, as it was said at the forum. This is really so.
Yes, exactly.
Everything has been substantiated, everything is in its place. People did a great job. It's really wonderful, it was a pleasure to watch it. However, I want to say, friends, this is not a victory, but it's already a serious help. That is, a huge amount of work has been done indeed. Everything is very significant, very important, and quite evidential, I repeat. This is primarily for all doubters. You know how it is. Our world is actually divided. There are those who, with their sleeves rolled up, work and search for evidence. Engage in science or simply research. After all, we have a lot of volunteers and we are absolutely grateful to them for that. They have actually been searching for various information for many years. And that's a very important component. It's impossible to do without it either. In order to analyze, collect some material and come to a certain conclusion, you need to do a lot of work in searching for information as well, because an enormous amount of information has been processed for people to arrive at this kind of understanding, and years of life have been spent on that. Now, it has all been proven. You see, again, we possessed this information from the very beginning, even from the very idea that we actually need to fulfill the dream of the prophets and build a creative society. Back then, we already knew what we have now presented at the forum. But nevertheless, a lot of work has been done, and it was all done very thoroughly. I can say that people did a great job. This is extremely hard and tedious work. Analyzing a huge amount of data and comparing it is very tedious. For those who don't know, it's like you just look at the numbers and add them up, to bring everything into a single understanding, moreover, not to pull up facts. I'll explain. We are absolutely not interested in this being truly so, in our mathematical model proving itself out. We are against that. We want to be mistaken, but unfortunately, as you also saw at the forum, everything is confirmed 100%. This is extremely upsetting, let's say, for us as people, but it is significant for all of humanity and it's important. Therefore, it is too early for us to relax yet. I'll tell you when we can relax. Even in the creative society, we shouldn't relax. When we build the ideal society, then we will relax.
Great.
There is a big request for the team of volunteers, let's say, not to relax. We have a lot of work ahead, although everyone is doing a great job. Thank you all very much. A tremendous amount of work has been done. No institute in the world would be able to handle it. This is indeed true. And even a coalition of institutes would not be able to do such a job, definitely. But the result is good, and this is taking into account that we haven't shown everything. And unfortunately, we have voiced only what may be voiced for now. I started saying that we could have told about this a long time ago, back when we began to research, or rather, what was the reason why we actually began to research what exactly people want around the world. We carried out a lot of projects, such as the Universal Grain and others, conducted a lot of surveys, and a lot of people took part in that. Those are true volunteers, really wonderful people indeed. I'm talking about you, friends. Thank you very much. And many didn't even realize how significant their work was. It would seem to be just surveys or compilation of the received material, but it's indeed a tremendous work. When we became convinced that people really want this all over the world, only then did we start this project, because it is based on people's will, on their desires and aspirations. It will not work any other way. If we had no chance that people want to live well, that people want to live in the creative society, there would be no point in starting it. and then everyone would pay attention to something else. Like it is up to a drowning man to save himself, right? We would be working on saving ourselves, not others. But taking into account that all our surveys, let's say it was a time-consuming and serious, in-depth work, millions of people around the world were interviewed, and it confirmed that people want to live in the creative society, people want to live according to behests of the prophets, and this is exactly what urged us to do more. Well, as you can see, we have succeeded in something. We are still far from victory, but friends, that's what life is for, and it is not definitive yet, whether we'll be able to do what we want or not, whether we will have enough time or not. Well, it's more interesting this way. I'll put it so. If we gave everything right away, imagine, for instance, some 10 years ago.
When people were completely unprepared, yes.
Yes, it would be far from being right. People would not understand us, and many things would even be dangerous to give. Well, that's another topic. Now, thank God, that's it. The forum has passed. I would say 100% as expected. It's a pity there was little time, and a lot of things we wanted to say were not included in the forum, even those that could still be said publicly. We cannot do anything about it. There are restrictions on YouTube. Well, perhaps they have already done a good thing, for which again I would like to even thank YouTube, that there are wonderful people there, and they were thanked at the forum. It's really wonderful when people sort things out and restore channels. There are good people everywhere. After all, it is us who make the world either better or worse, and everything depends on us, on our choice, right?
Yes, such deeds are certainly very inspiring.
It's nice.
And bring a lot of joy indeed.
It's very nice. Okay, let's proceed to answers to your questions. The first one was...
Do you regret anything?
To be honest, I regret just one thing. I regret those few people who left the project at the very beginning. They just threw themselves on the sidelines of life. Why? I'll explain, because those were really good and talented people with good potential. However, when they came, they actually entered the team of volunteers with their own stereotypical consumerist yardstick and could not get reliable, extensive information at that time, the one they wanted to have. And you know, to be honest, I feel a little guilty. Of course, the choice is up to every person, but I believe I am also guilty that this small group of people actually left. They left ALLATRA, and of course, there was no creative society at that time, but it all came down to the same thing. The creative society actually started thanks to the volunteers of ALLATRA. Now, yes, now the entire world, let's say, people of various beliefs and various motivations support the creative society. This is wonderful, and that's the way it should be. The creative society is a platform for everyone. But the initial, tremendous work was done by the volunteers of ALLATRA. And this should not be forgotten either. Whatever label is being attached to ALLATRA, I'll say the following: the best people are in ALLATRA. Why? Because they understand the truth, they feel, and there are people who are able to work nights for the sake of other people on a volunteer basis, trying to change the world for the better for all people, and hence for themselves, in such a good and proper way. This is wonderful. People who really undertook such a service to make the dream of our prophets come true. What can we call such people? They're truly heroes. This is indeed so. But unfortunately, there were individuals who left at one time. Some wanted to build a business, to use volunteers for their own business. We had such cases too. Others took offense for not being given official posts. There are volunteers whom you cannot lead while those people wanted to lead. Still others simply did not understand or did not like something. Well, I'll put it this way. I was guilty before almost all of these people at one time, and I will explain why. They came, these people are talented. There were almost no random people. They felt much more. They were aware that some processes were going on which they didn't see. But at that time, we couldn't tell them the truth, that which has been voiced at the forum on April 22nd, a few days ago. Why? Because it would be pretty much premature. And people remain people. I would say it is hard to know too much, and not everyone has enough strength to carry this burden. That's why, to be honest, a lot was hidden from many people. Despite the fact that everyone was friends, there was one team. Well, that's the way it should be, friends. Don't be offended, but it's true. All of us have done a lot of work. People felt that something was going on. They were aware that something was happening.
Something great.
Yes, but unfortunately, we couldn't explain. Even what they felt, of course, some of them were offended. It looked like they were not trusted or something like that. The information that wasn't told and explained in full caused these people to take offense. Such situations happen, friends. I apologize to everyone if I offended someone, didn't pay enough attention to someone, or didn't support someone in time. But I hope you now understand what serious and profound work was carried out, despite the fact that you saw too little. I apologize for not giving you enough information, and perhaps even my actions were the reason why those people, let's say, were forced to leave the movement. This is true.
But this was also done in care for those people, first and foremost.
I wouldn't say it was care for them. They would have probably been better off if I had been more open with them. But it was care for humanity. And that served as the main reason. After all, we are all human beings. And I want to answer your second question right away. What was the hardest thing?
Yes, exactly.
That was the hardest thing. To keep secret from good people, from our friends, of what was happening and even of what we were doing. After all, how many wonderful people took part in various projects? A lot. Our friends, our volunteers, let's say, blindly conducted a lot of experiments. They just saw what they saw and did not even understand what it was for and why. And indeed, that was the hardest thing. Another difficult thing, I'll say it openly and honestly, was to encourage the mouths of those who were aware to keep quiet. After all, there is nothing a person wants to tell as much as a secret. That's true.
Which impressed him very much at a certain moment, of course.
There were people who had enough information, but they were not allowed to talk about it, and it also tormented them. And finding ways to convince these people why and for what reason they shouldn't discuss it even with the nearest and dearest ones probably was the hardest thing. That was the most difficult point, in fact. It seems easy, yes, it is easier in the army. There's a command or something else, while in our case all are volunteers, free people. If they want to, they help. If they don't want to, they don't help. And if you've been entrusted with some project and you know more than others, you actually want to discuss it. We are all people. To share this information or to express your own self, but it's impossible. That was probably the most difficult thing. And what is the third question?
What else would you like to implement, Igor Mikhailovich, you personally?
Well, if we exclude the Creative Society, to be honest, it relates to the Creative Society. It's a replicator and a health capsule. This is really wonderful, isn't it? Let's take a replicator. You can have as many dumplings as you want, moreover, different ones. And that's it, you won't be overweight. There's a health capsule, you see. You can just run back and forth.
Until you get bored.
Well, if we get bored, we'll switch to meat pies. That's also a thing, after all. The world rests not just on dumplings, right? There are also meat pies and many other delicious things. It's a joke, friends, but to be serious. Speaking seriously, I would like to implement a project, and I was going to implement this project, but due to the current situation, we have lost opportunities so far, but That's not the point. In fact, there is an interesting project and it relates to our pyramid. Well, actually, the latter is quite primitive. It has 11 tori, but thanks to it, we have made really serious breakthroughs, and that was mentioned at the forum. It's interesting. A lot of people, let's say, went through the pyramid and took part in those experiments. Just look, even though it has a primitive design, it gave tremendous results. I mean, people themselves observed how their health changed. Although it wasn't made to conduct health experiments, nevertheless, it proved to be very effective. It was like a side effect, yes, but those who needed it, who tried it, the result was tremendous, of course. Although it's not for that at all. It allowed people to study a lot of processes. First and foremost, in order for them to begin to understand how this world is arranged, that is, until a person touches something, whatever you tell him, he won't believe in it. Of course, the hypothesis that was voiced is fundamental and interesting, let's put it so. In what sense? It answers a lot of questions. But in order for people to realize and understand it, at the very first stages, of course, such a design was needed, the one that could be made at that time. It served as a very serious help. And again, numerous conducted experiments made thousands of people think about even the realness of this world and about the way everything works. Now it is clear how everything works, even for those who first came across it, watched the forum, and now they even understand how their telephone works, what their consciousness is, how it functions, and many other things, right?
It is really amazing when people suddenly started to know more than all the scientists in the world before that.
Believe me, scientists will know much more. Why? Because not at once. I also want to say that this information will be rejected by many people, because it wasn't they who thought it up. You know, somehow they don't want to...
A jealous attitude to someone else's hypothesis.
A jealous attitude, of course, sort of. These are volunteers, people who are far from science, but those scientists do not know who took part in the development and what those people achieved in general.
One shouldn't rush to attach labels.
Quite right. But we promised that it is not without grounds that we said it is possible to create a counteraction even to the cosmic impact on our core. Well, we have confirmed our words. Now it is up to the scientific world and the entire humanity to decide whether we will give scientists the opportunity to continue this work or not. So, returning to my, let's say,
dream.
Not a dream, but it is interesting. It is possible to build a device, but it will be of a completely different shape for comparison and understanding. First of all, for those who were in the pyramid device with the right settings, or even better, with different settings. People felt how it affected and what happened, and how their consciousness reacted, how they reacted. You know, the most valuable thing is that the pyramid gives people a very good understanding of what a human is and what consciousness is. Certain settings that people went through, moreover different people. But the effect was the same, and it is wonderful when they start feeling as their true selves, as personalities, and some of them even for the first time in their lives because they never performed any practices.
Yes, exactly, the first experience.
And when they saw how their consciousness worked, how thoughts came, and what process was actually taking place, that was shocking for many people. So a new device is much subtler, much more powerful and interesting. I'll reveal a secret. Originally, we wanted to make it, and it should have 112, or better, 124 tori. Not 11 tori, but 124. Why? There will be 3 additional tori that will give a more subtle setting, and it's really great. Why? Well, these are totally different things. You cannot compare it. It is really much better and more powerful, to be honest. We didn't pull it off. Not so much financially, although we didn't pull it off financially either. It was because of the complexity of the design itself. The device has a different shape, which is complicated, and we contacted manufacturing facilities where airplanes are constructed, as well as other facilities. It turns out that achieving the desired result is not that easy. It is possible, after all, people produce everything, but it came down to such a complex process that we left it for the future.
For better times.
For better times, yes. So, we acted more rationally and did what was really simple and easy to do. People, ordinary specialists, good people, good specialists, simply did it, let's say, not factories. While with the other device, there were problems, but it is many, many times more effective. I'll say an order of magnitude more effective. It is really so. Why? Because those capabilities which, well, those who acquired them and who were in the pyramid, they know. If we multiply it by an order of magnitude, it will be an incomparable thing, you see?
Those settings are much subtler, right?
Certainly, of course. What opens up to a person? Let's not get ahead of ourselves. If God wills, we'll do it. Then,
This is surely amazing. I sincerely wish that this dream and these plans you had actually come true someday.
do you know what else encourages that? Firstly, people do not mature. It's a lie that people mature. When you realize yourself for the first time, while playing in a sandbox with other children, you remain like that all your life. You gain experience later on, positive and negative one. It all adds up, but you, my friend, stay in the sandbox for your lifetime. In all our lives, we chase toys. Someone is crazy about cars, another one about something else, right? There are hobbies, entertainment, and everything else. The same is in this case, we still want some toys. But that can also be attributed to the category of toys, big, interesting, very expensive and complex ones. But the capabilities these toys open up are tremendous. We can approach it that way as well. Do you know why? Because everything that happens in that device can easily be achieved through spiritual practices, even much more. No device will perform a spiritual practice instead of you. Not to mention following consequences. But on the other hand, a spiritual practice will not allow you to gain the experience that you gain in the device at the physical level. Exactly, thanks to the work of consciousness. And you as personality, when you redirect your potential, attention, and many other things.
This is very important because many people said we would like to feel at least once what to focus on, to feel like personality, to feel this inner freedom, what deep inner feelings
Even the
are.
pyramid gave many people such an opportunity.
Yes.
Whereas the device I'm talking about is many times more powerful, not even times, but by an order of magnitude.
Even to get to know one's true self.
Yes, it provides such an opportunity. However, there is also a disadvantage there. I mean, an unprepared person cannot approach such serious settings. Why? Because difficulties will appear as well. Indeed, not everyone's psyche can withstand it. This should be approached subtly. Well, to become prepared implies a rather short process, so to say. And a person will be able to make such journeys that he hasn't even dreamed of. Even science fiction writers have not described them.
Great. Igor Mikhailovich, I can't help but also voice people's concerns today. The point is that at the forum, thanks to the hypothesis, let's say, very important and certainly serious information was made public. And we suddenly realized that such technologies as the Eye of God and Vajra are actually not mythological or science fiction technologies. This is an absolute reality. And people come to learn about this reality now, in the consumerist format. So I certainly understand the fears of many viewers of the forum. Those fears are the following. Haven't we actually opened Pandora's box? What do you think in this regard?
I think we have opened Pandora's box. But is there anything threatening us? I'll say no. Why? Because from the moment people have heard about it to the moment it will start working, at least 8 to 10 years are needed. I mean, if we take a very good, serious group, very smart people, who have really engaged in studying this whole process, they will spend at least 8 years. It won't work any other way. All this is calculated easily and simply. But I have a simple question. What can threaten us after 8 years, friends? There are two options. Either the Cerberus or the creative society. In any case, this Pandora does not threaten us in any way. This is really so. As for the fact that it was opened, yes, it was opened. Again, as for the Eye of God and Vajra, they were in previous civilizations. It was mentioned openly, and it has been preserved to this day. Many used it as symbols and so on, but why did they do it even without understanding and knowing? After all, previous civilizations conveyed that to us, let's say, in plain text, in the form of whatever, infographics or some kind of cartoons, pictures on stones. And why was it exactly in such a form? Because it's the only thing that could survive and reach our time, as it actually turned out. After all, when the cycle changes and there are serious destructions, everything is swept away. But still, there remained megaliths, which also confirm the existence of more advanced civilizations that had the technology which we do not have nowadays. And again, by means of sign writing and in those very figures that were drawn and carved in stones, God knows when, information about the structure of the world has reached us. That is, the most important and significant thing was transmitted to us. But I have another question, why have we forgotten that? I have a simple question, 6,000 years ago, we, as humans, communicated by means of signs, that is, there was a written transmission of information by means of signs. But why did we forget it? How could we forget the most important and the main thing? We switched to associative writing. And that's a fact. This means that because of the development of the consumerist format, we have literally lost the most important and valuable thing. Whereas literally 7,000 to 8,000 years ago, signs were the most important thing. Why? Because they carried important information and they influenced this world. Now only a fool can deny that a sign can cause an impact. How much research has been done confirming the work of science? Again, those very Chladni figures. When a sound draws shapes, that is, everything works. This is a world that is woven of the same thing, and everything has its own connections. And some things affect precisely this primary level, let's say, and from there the impact on coarse material level already begins. There's no other way to put it. Therefore, a sign has always had power. So how could we forget elementary simple things that we remembered not so long ago? We've lost very much in the same way. In the beginning, again, the conveyed knowledge was usurped by a small group, right? It was like only for the initiated, and later on that group dwindled to nothing, someone didn't tell someone else, and we lost the most valuable information. So now we have to reinvent a bicycle, and the same wheel anew. Merely that, but everything is actually confirmed. Again, a simple question, okay? When did they first start building tower-type structures with dome tops? Any sensible person would say, well, perhaps 1,000 or 2,000 years ago, and so on. Who would admit that it was 24, even 25,000 years ago, to be correct? Somehow one cannot wrap one's head around it. Who? The primitive people. Did they do that with stone axes or what? Right?
Yes, exactly. Through the prism of history, it's impossible to wrap one's head around that.
Of course, but when people find petroglyphs of those times, depicting buildings we can see nowadays, domed ones, exactly the same, somehow words disappear, you see? And how many such artifacts are there? A lot. And how many such artifacts have been destroyed or lie somewhere in the vaults? A lot. Why? This is inconvenient. You cannot tell and explain how this can be, what's going on, and why this is so. And it turns out that there were past civilizations, but what about Darwin's theory and everything else? As for the fact that Darwin's theory isn't valid, didn't they know that? They did know. The issues of evolution and all that, let's not touch upon that because we are digressing. We can talk about it endlessly, but it doesn't serve any purpose. The most important thing is that we have prospects, friends, and that's what we should think about. As for Pandora's box, it's not that scary. You know, I've just recalled, when we started talking about it, in fact, we almost let it slip at one time, and we could have opened that Pandora's box in 2015, and that would have been dangerous. I mean, do you remember when Zachar presented the physics report, Allatra physics and so forth? He compiled and presented it. Zachar actually did a great job. This had a certain success among the participants. A lot became clear. Although I would put it this way, in order to understand and master physics, people with a scientific mentality, or let's say scientists, even with a great desire, would need from 25 to 50 years. In other words, it is absolutely harmless. One has to invest a lot of effort in it. And only in 25 years will they begin to understand something in this physics. However, there was one man, let's not mention his name, a good man, a chemist, and all that, but with a slight mental disorder, so to say, a slight egoism. That's not the point. But this played a major role. He wanted to draw conclusions not just based on physics, but also on chemistry. Since he wanted to engage in that, fine, I said he could go ahead and do that, come up with these proofs, how to break down chemistry, pretty much the same way as it was
In the physics report.
Yes, absolutely right.
By analogy with it.
With physics, absolutely right. So he delved into it. But he didn't manage it. It's natural that he couldn't manage it. It was unrealistic for him. But since he was, I would say egocentric, again, it was due to his mental state, nothing more. He began to get a little annoyed by that and started worrying. And naturally, he started asking lots of questions, and we sort of started to slightly get carried away with chemistry from that perspective. It is clear that it was possible, although a bit difficult, to convey chemistry from the position of physics which Zakhar reported to us. And before we noticed that, we got carried away. We began to tell this theory, which has just been voiced. It fits much better in the subject of chemistry.
Yes.
And it actually explains chemistry more as it is closer to it. After all, that one is closer to physics, while this one is already closer to chemistry, pre-quantum states, with the transition to quantum states. So under certain circumstances, this person began to ask questions, and I observed that if we said a little more, even he would understand the essence. So I looked, what are we doing? We literally got carried away with him and almost opened this very Pandora's box while it was 2015. And that was already serious. If we had opened it back then, who knows what the situation would be like now, right? Perhaps we all would have had to march in unison under the same flag and sing the same songs. Anything could have happened.
Igor Mikhailovich, you said that this knowledge perfectly demonstrates the prospects in physics and chemistry, but still consciousness does not fully understand what other prospects open up before us, people, in what fields of science.
In all of them. Well, let's take...
It turns out to be a universal key.
It's a universal key.
A universal key.
Absolutely right. It is something that shows how our world is arranged. So whatever we approach, let's take medical science, okay? After all, there are a lot of inexplicable facts in medical science. For example, how regeneration occurs up to the point of complete restitution of a previously removed organ. After all, a lot has been written about that. How? Spontaneous regeneration, okay, fine. Perhaps it is due to some gene, stem cells, something else, and various explanations are contrived. Okay, let's take placebo and nocebo. Until today, no one has described or will be able to describe how this mechanism works. Or rather, not until today, but until the 22nd of April, before the forum. Whereas after the forum, let's say not on the 22nd but on the 23rd, although in some regions it was still the 22nd. After the forum, anyone will describe it. You see, I mean, look. It's a simple understanding,
yes, right.
But it puts everything in its place.
The puzzle pieces fit together.
And people already understand what placebo is, what nocebo is, what thoughts are, how to control them. And it is clear how neurophysiology works, right?
What our attention is.
And this is the most important thing. The value of attention in this case, I'll put it this way, for people who are far away from religion or anything else, from working on themselves. But it at least gives an understanding of what toxic thoughts are, right? Let's take a look. A person receives some kind of negative information from some source, and he immediately tries to share it. Why? And why, when sharing it with someone, he transmits it in almost exactly the same toxic soup, right? And that person then transmits it to the next person until the information gets to a neutral person. But this neutral one must be either a complete idiot or a spiritually developed person, and then this information stops. Alternatively, it gradually depletes due to Chinese whispers. Doesn't that remind you of radiation?
Yes, it does, quite clearly.
What did the prophets tell us about? Wait, when the prophets came here and told us about it, there was no concept of either psychiatry or psychology. There was nothing, right? But they said, don't hold grudges, don't hold bad thoughts, love each other. That's the main thing. Why did they say that? Let's consider this from the perspective of an elementary understanding of even what was presented at the forum. Basically, only the foundation was presented there, the basis, but the main principles were told. And then people can freely sort out this theory on their own. Compare everything and everything falls into place. A simple example, a person has bad, evil, unkind thoughts. They're toxic, right?
Poisonous for him.
So it turns out that there are a lot of poisonous snakes that are destroying him. Isn't that so?
Yes, exactly. First of all, himself.
Therefore, if you hold a grudge against someone, you destroy yourself. If we face the truth, if a person carries this grudge inside, he falls ill more often. He has no happiness, he has no meaning of life, in the literal sense of the word, or his meaning of life becomes to do something bad or play dirty tricks on someone, right? In other words, he is toxic himself, and he infects other people with this radiation, right?
Right.
But when a person lives in love and in joy, he has, I wanted to say, white and fluffy snakes, sorry people, I don't know many harmless snakes. Well, I know a grass snake. What other snakes are there that are not poisonous but pretty? A python is not poisonous, but I wouldn't say it is pretty.
I don't know. It's hard for me to call snakes pretty.
In general, to be honest, I don't have much feeling for snakes.
Neither do I.
Yes, I like hamsters more. Sometimes some of them bite, but at least they are nicer and not so slithery. Well, we cannot help that, it wasn't us who invented it, to be honest. That's how it was explained back in past civilizations, using the examples of linear and coiled states of snakes. So,
What is very important is the inner core in a person, so that he has kind of lid inside, so that he doesn't succumb to the influence of these poisonous
there you
snakes.
go. Absolutely right, then you won't be exposed to toxic influence. But again, let's look at people, okay? What is the impact of, for example, alcohol or drugs? Why shouldn't one take it? I mean, what does alcohol or a drug do? Yes, we understand it from the spiritual perspective, but we understand it as a consequence, whereas now we understand the physics of the process. What actually happens? That alcohol and drugs release precisely the toxic snakes. They contribute to their release. That's why Landau used to say that after a glass of champagne he couldn't come up with a single invention for a month. And why? Because there is no inspiration. Because there is no that power, meaning no those fiery pure snakes that lift him into the clouds, where he can simply take this invention and bring it back with him. And what is attention? Well, I'll say more. What is real, friends? The power of real, the power of attention. And here's the answer. You see, I mean, if you look at it, it seems to be such a children's fairy tale, with drawings for children. But if you look deeper, it tells everything. What I like the most? Well, I liked everything, to be honest. Everything is great and wonderful. But what I liked the most is what happens at CERN. After all, it wasn't even disclosed. It is known to those who work there that when they collide, a few protons, which are made up of several elementary particles, larger compounds fly apart in larger quantities.
Yes, it was very impressive.
For the CERN stuff, it was a real dead end too. They contrived all kinds of things and commented on it in every possible way, but it all can be explained elementarily. Of course, Alatra physics is much cooler. It will allow any school child to calculate all the processes on a tablet, but in order to bring it into a functional state, excuse me, like I said, for smart people it will take from 25 to 50 years. In order to make it practical, I mean to be able to implement it and receive something, it takes a lot of time and effort. Well, it is actually a more serious subject. This is the next stage. It is, let's say, much higher than the micro level that was described. While this one is closer to us, it's already more understandable. And again, it is also clear what dark energy or dark matter is, which was described and could not be explained. Now everyone understands what our world is. If you look at it from that side, then this whole world would be a sheer serpentarium, therefore. This is how we live in this serpentarium. However, we can create, sort of an oasis here where only good snakes will live. It's all in our hands if we want that. Right?
Right.
Do you know what the most interesting thing is? This level can be perceived in this new device I was talking about with 124 Tori. Well, it is possible with 112 Tori, of course, but with 124 it is better. It's interesting when a person without knowledge of physics or anything else, when he encounters a world that is all flowing and all alive, it's like diving into the ocean. No, it's cooler, even cooler. The ocean cannot compare. If a person for the first time dives into the ocean in some kind of a bath cave in complete safety and sees that there is another world, it can be impressive, but not as impressive as, well, again, one can be not only impressed, but can also acquire knowledge from such devices. That's why it is also useful. What else does it give? It gives a lot, you see. This hypothesis is capable of building a world that cannot be compared to anything else. Let's take the time when computers first appeared. As we remember, there was a game called Tetris. Everybody was into that game. Then Mario. Mario was absolutely a tip-top. Everybody played it, right? And look at the present day. When we put on glasses, a special suit, step on a special platform, and we have virtual reality, some kind of a game, where you feel everything, you enter and forget in general that you are in the game, when you sense, feel and see everything in reality. So, if you compare the level, but you cannot compare that either because, in fact, that very Tetris, and not even Tetris, but tennis, remember the first one, that game?
Tennis for two.
Yes, the very first computer game that appeared was Tennis for Two, right? So this Tennis for Two and this virtual reality of today doesn't even answer the question of what we can achieve in literally 5 to 10 years at most. This is a completely different level. It is billions of times more processing and transferring information without loss of time. This is really so. Just imagine what technologies can be there. I mean, we could have a real globe spinning here right now. I mean, a perfect copy. We could see ourselves where we are and what we are talking about. Moreover, it would be all real and technologically solved. It's whatever you like. Not to mention those replicators or health capsules. If there is a will, in 5 to 7 years we will have it all, at most. We need the right conditions.
Igor Mikhailovich, what do you think was the most valuable on April 22nd, 2023 at the forum?
The most valuable were the people there, the people who are really our friends. And they proved that they are the most valuable in this world. But in terms of the information, if we take it overall, okay, I guess, from what I heard, it is what Alexei said at the end. Before the girl, although the girl's words were just as valuable, but before her, he addressed scientists and said, "We have provided the fulcrum, and if you use science as a lever, you can. You really can. You can finally turn this world the right side up." And that, I think, was the most valuable thing. Well, we can talk about this for a very long time. The forum is really impressive, but why talk about it? We should act. We still have a lot of work to do, friends. So, let's just love each other. And thank you, friends, for everything. Thank you for being here. And I've already apologized to those before whom I think I'm a little guilty. I hope you have understood why I had to keep certain things hidden from you in the past, which was upsetting to some. Don't be offended, friends. Everything that is done to preserve this world in the first place. And thank you. Thank you for being there. Thank you for helping. And in general, thank you for everything, friends. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Igor Mikhailovich.
Many thanks to people. Peace be with you, friends.